I appeared on a show with 3 Trump supporters. So as I'm sure you can imagine, it got very, very interesting very quickly. And so you have popping up on screen there, Tim Pool. This is his show. He's a big right-wing influencer, then joined by 2 other right-wing influencers, Andrew Wilson and Myron Gaines. But different than the last couple of times I went on and debated these folks, I got to bring a partner. And so Josiah, friend of the show from Pondering Politics, joined me. And I think this will be fascinating to go over for the normal reason, just because different parts did get heated. We'll talk about that and the subject matter. But I also think as I've done more of these appearances on different platforms, certain things that I've learned, I think, produce interesting takeaways. So I'll break that down. Like this first clip, you'll notice I'm doing something very intentionally. And I'll explain that. And it is directly because of my experience the last couple of times. And then also, like I said, the subject matter is fascinating. While you watch, please do click the subscribe button if you appreciate this show.
He's fascistic, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know who wants to start off first, but Luke, is he a fascist?
Yeah, we can debate that particular label. I've noticed when I've watched past debates among MAGA folks, the benefit, or at least what they seem to thrive off of, is getting real into the weeds on a particular semantic debate. That's less relevant to me than going through the specifics of why I might call him that. But let's not get so focused on the label, but instead whether or not we find moral, whether or not we find...
No, let's get focused on the label. So listen, here's why.
Because you can't defend...
Well, first
finish
of
off my
all,
point, though. You can't defend... Well, hold on. I'm going to finish this. You can't defend what he does, so then you try to distract from that with just really abstract
from your
label
lies.
discussions.
Yeah, from your lies.
What he's done or lies?
So you can't...
No. So first of all, hang on, Luke. Semantics are super important to a debate for a reason. It's so that we have clarity in what we're actually talking about. So when you go, Trump's a fascist, yeah, it's very important that you clarify exactly what that means, why it means that, what the historic standard is that you're providing against
that. But I'm saying that debate is an interesting one. I've had it a bunch of times, less relevant than whether or not you can defend the things he did factually, not the labels, the facts of what he did.
Why are you calling him a fascist then, Luke? If you're not prepared to defend it.
Tim brought that up. I'm interested in...
Well, it's so...
You call him that, Luke. Why do you call him that unless you can defend it?
He is called in the media a fascist over and over and over again for 10 years.
And
he calls him that.
My question is, most importantly, then we can get to that. Can you defend the things that we point to as a threat to democracy, as anti-democratic, whatever label you use? I just don't care about getting that bogged down.
Can you defend that he's a fascist or not, Luke?
I absolutely have had that discussion a bunch of times.
That's not what I asked you. Can you repeat my question? I asked you, can you defend that he's a fascist?
We would point out things that we might describe as authoritarian or fascistic, even if you don't agree with a particular label. And that's what he's saying we want to talk about. So, for example, did he plot to overturn the 2020 election? Did he resist the peaceful transfer of power? Does he command a cult of personality? These are factual questions.
Does he threaten the media?
This is not. I'm not going to make a whataboutism. I'm going to say, okay, let's start from that presumption that would make Trump a fascist. That would also make Obama or Biden or Kamala much the same.
Which we can discuss, which is false.
What you just described as Donald Trump would apply to them in
they assemble fraudulent slates of elections.
When have they ever resisted the peaceful transfer of power or plotted to overturn an election?
I believe this was the first election in 52 years. The Democratic Party has not challenged the election.
No, you're talking about the thing that is within congressional rules, which is you can object to the account. That's different than assembling from different states people who aren't the lawful electors, and then trying to get them counted by your vice president as the real one.
Right.
It's completely different.
But that is also a procedure.
So one is a... Nope, you can't just get random people to sign fake forms saying they're the real electors.
They're not fake forms.
They were.
They're not fake forms.
Do you know why the people were prosecuted?
What do you think we mean by fake forms?
States?
We obviously it's not invisible
paper. Define what a fake form is.
We don't mean by an invisible piece of paper. It was a fraudulent document.
Wait, that's semantics, Tim. Like I said, very important to debates.
Because you can't talk.
We don't want to spend 45 minutes on what's a fake form.
Right. So that little moment embodies why Josiah and I were so stubborn about what we're going to talk about. And I even said beforehand, I don't get to have these sorts of conversations a ton. And so now that we're in the room together, sorry, but I'm going to have to hold you to something specific. Because what I noticed is that people do deploy, whether it's purposefully bad faith or not, it does create a bad faith discussion, sort of debate techniques that seek to avoid the core important part of the debate. So you might remember last time I was on Tim Pool, there was sort of, I say I don't think that the January 6th rioters should be pardoned. And then Tim does, and this is a satirical version of what he did. But, oh yeah, well, if you can't name the exact shoe that the rioter had on and the name of his second wife's, blah, blah, all of these hyper narrow follow-up questions that seek to abstract the conversation from the core part of it, which is, do we think, in the case of the rioters, that people who attempted to do the things they did should be, even in a symbolic way, but also the actual act, should avoid being held fully accountable, and that being something the president's choosing to do because it's people who were doing those things in his name. Or with this, I've noticed that, and this is why I was going, we can talk about the fascist label. You'll notice a little bit later, we actually pull up the definition of fascist, and Andrew goes, no. It's just your attempt often to avoid the things, the facts of what Trump did that we take issue with. Because if you're going to go and justify the assembling of fraudulent electors, or even the threats against the media, things that we would use to use such a label, things that would lead to us using such a label like fascistic or authoritarian. But if you're okay with those things, then I don't really care about the label. I really don't. You can call him a poo-poo head. I don't care what you call him. That's why you don't actually hear me say fascist very often. When it comes up, I'll make the point that it's a little bit absurd how angry MAGA gets. But that's not valuable to me. So first, if we'll talk about the things that we point to as problematic, as against principles that we think presidents should hold, and you'll honestly engage with that, then, yeah, so ultranationalist, or attacking democratic norms, like trying to prevent a peaceful transfer of power, or wanting to go after outlets that do coverage of you that you don't like. Those things, and we do get into that in this. Luckily, they eventually go there. But those things do create, not that Trump equals fascists of the past, but that there's a fascistic characteristic to those different actions and words, right? So I just know that doing the definitional debate, placing semantics over substance, is where they really want to go, because then they don't have to talk about the attempt to steal the election by Trump. They don't have to talk about those threats against outlets in the way that he doesn't seem to respect key American ideals. So we're going to go there because that's the important thing. Then if we got through that, all right, cool. Let's talk about labels until we're blue in the face. Let's see here. I think we have more from this part. Oh my gosh!
Why is no the reason that it seems to be
I'll lay it out funny that we're doing simply.
You're doing it out with y'all.
You see, this is the thing. You guys are trying to present some sophistry as to your argument.
No, you can't engage with what Trump did. That's exactly what you're doing.
I'm going to make my point.
So this part is him bringing up and we've talked about this before, the 1960 Hawaii electors incident, and eventually I'll quickly summarize in this video why that's a silly thing to bring up. With what Trump did.
I'll make my point. Stop pattering.
And then will you let us make our points?
So, absolutely. Though the problem is I'm asking about Hawaii and you keep changing the subject to Trump. So let's go through Hawaii. Mm-hmm. The Democrats had no right, by your logic, to fill out this paperwork and submit it to the federal government as the certified slate of electors. Mm-hmm. Only after the fact did the court make a decision. Now let's go to 2020. If there is pending court decisions, and there were, Republicans doing the same thing Democrats did.
No, you're wrong. The circuit court decided that a new certificate was necessary
after the fact.
Before Congress convened.
Yes, but after they had already submitted the documents. This is why I'm asking you, when you said they were false documents, I didn't say anything else. What makes them false? It's the same as Hawaii. If you want to make the argument that Democrats did the same thing in 1960, I will agree with you.
But we're not making that argument because that's not what they did.
This is the point. In 1960, while there was still a recount going on and ongoing court cases, and it was so narrow they really didn't know which way it was going to go. Then they didn't even submit those or try to get them counted. The sitting president at the time until it was determined. Trump's case, he got all 7 states after this whole process had been concluded. It wasn't close enough for the recount to flip it. The recounts had concluded, and he was trying to get not let's have 2 standing by because we don't know how this recount's going to go, but from 7 states that we know the outcome of, but I'm making false claims of fraud on them. I'm going to get Pence to keep me as president by accepting fake electors. Tim, for a second, because we're supposed to be debating them, I think, could they also try to defend this stance?
Yeah, because you're comparing apples and oranges thing as far as I'm concerned. That was silly. Yeah, like if a court decided in one of the 5 or 7 states that Trump tried to peddle the false elector scheme, that if a court contested the Democratic slate of electors, then I think you would have an apples to apples comparison. But that's not what happened. In none of the 7 states,
and it wasn't close enough to where they didn't know which way it was going to go.
Right, there was no actual ambiguity.
Yeah. Andrew, anything? Myron?
Well, what's the argument here? Is it fascism, or because you guys went into a whole other
one
tangent?
of the key,
Because you guys went. I don't know if you guys. It started with fascism, but we went into Kennedy election in 1960s.
I'll explain. One of the key tenets of, again, I know you'll get really triggered, so I'm trying to stay away from that particular term, but we can say fascism, authoritarianism,
is based. I don't know what
anti-democracy.
It's pretty fucking based. I don't know what the issue is, baby.
Is that legitimate or a joke? Because we can go into that. That'd be interesting.
I mean, we can go.
Now suddenly you want to talk about fascism.
One of the key tenets is rejecting democratic principles and the democratic process.
According to who?
According to every single fascism scholar ever and the definition.
Okay.
Do you mean according to who, like what determines the democratic processes?
No, I'm asking according to who.
Yeah, sure, read it.
Yeah, go ahead. So, far right, authoritarian. No. Pull up Giovanni Jenkins.
You see? This is why. Because we get nowhere, because no matter what definition we use or what label we use, you're going to try to spin yourself out of and ask for, well, let's just keep learning about the history of the word fascism to figure out if it's okay what Trump did. No, because I don't care, again, what you call it, as long as you're on board with we should oppose those actions. And a term like fascism is very charged. So I understand, and that's why in these debates I avoid it, because I know that for their audience, it sounds like we're saying Trump equals Hitler, which is not our argument at all. But that makes them feel more comfortable. Oh, well, tell me how he's Hitler. He's not. So I don't know why you're saying that. Or tell me, if you were to read that definition, oh, well, how do you define far right? How do you define authoritarian? How do you define ultranational? Then we can spend 3 hours on nothing that gets at the core of why Trump is destructive. And as you saw there, starting with the attempts to block the peaceful transfer of power, and there was a similar part on threats to the media, if you keep it about and so this is my takeaway for all of you, in debates where people might deploy sort of dishonest tactics, just put your foot down about what the discussion's about. Here's what the discussion's about. And if you can engage with that thoughtfully, then we'll go anywhere you'd like. But I will not let you obfuscate and avoid the most relevant and consequential part of the debate. Because if you're okay with the things he did, then whether or not you label him as a fascist or not, it's totally irrelevant to me. And I'd rather just hear why you think it's okay for someone try to, prevent the other actual victor from coming into office in illegal ways. Why you think it's okay to pardon the January 6ers. Why you think it's okay to create a media environment that is terrified to challenge you. And the last few debates really taught me about that, because in a normal conversation, and I do have more to play, but in a normal conversation, if someone asks you a question, you just kind of answer it, right? Like if Jaden said, hey, Luke, do you think Trump's a fascist? And I go, I mean, yeah, sure. He's not maybe what you would say 100% or equal to past fascists that instantly pop in people's head. I try not to even say the names because people get so triggered by it. Oh, wait, are you saying he's... No, we're just learning from history. Chill out. But... and then if Jaden went, okay, well, what sort of do you mean by that? I would just explain what I did earlier. Oh yeah, so the nationalism, the attacks against democratic norms, and go on. And the cult of personality. I wouldn't go, no, we're talking about this, right? But when someone is doing that because whenever they know they're on camera and don't want to have to answer for the actual bad acts, then like we saw in previous debates, they'll sort of exploit how good faith I'm trying to be, going, oh yeah, I'll answer any question. Oh wait, we just spent 2 hours and didn't get to the core of why I came here. So that's why both Josiah and I were so clear on that, throughout the debate. So here's a little bit more, and I'm blanking on what the topic is, but I'm sure it's connected to what we just watched.
But anyway,
call me out, whatever.
I'm actually happy to dive into this. You say that I'm avoiding your questions. I'm not. First of all, I'll answer them directly.
Sure.
It's well within Trump's rights, even if it was. Let's just say you were right. Let's just say I grant it. It's within his rights to set alternatives electors. He's well within his rights to do that. Tell me why that's even wrong.
Aren't people being prosecuted in states for participating in this scheme?
So again, sorry, I'm going to go back. Let me go back. Let's play it again, and I won't interrupt. But what? See what I mean? Thank you. This is why it was so valuable to put my foot down. I don't care what you call him if you're going to say, I don't think it's bad to pick your own electors. To say my vice president should try to coerce Congress into certifying not the lawful electoral college outcome, but a different one, so I stay in office. What's the problem with that? And then watch what he says. Because he went, why is that bad? And just I went, because he lost, so he shouldn't try to declare that he won. And then Andrew goes, so what if he, no, let's pretend that he won. Well, no, but he did it. That's key to this. Okay.
It's right, even if it was. Let's just say you were right. Let's just say I grant it. It's within his rights to set alternatives electors. He's well within his rights to do that. Tell me why that's even wrong.
Aren't people being prosecuted in states for participating in this scheme?
Who?
The fake electors.
Ooh.
In all wait, I got a question. Does the law
name each one of their names, or you don't know what you're talking about? Blonde or brunette?
prescribe morality?
No.
Wait, you said the right. Do you mean legal right or moral
yes
right?
Or no question.
Sorry.
No, man. No, I thought it was a good question.
So what's actually wrong with it?
So
why is it even problematic?
Because he didn't win the election.
So let's just say he didn't.
Okay. Well, then agree.
Stop, Spurgley. Let's just say he didn't. Let's just assume it. Stop, Spurgley. Let's just can I have a back and forth for
the election
2
was
seconds?
Stolen. I mean,
without you nipping my heels.
This is interesting that we're even on this. Like the election was stolen, guys. That is why
2024 election.
The 2020 election.
Oh shit.
So that's and there were a lot of moments like that, but this segment would get too long if I went to every little part. But we're gonna do a second segment about we got into a gay marriage debate and some other things. But closing out this one, I think that's the most iconic moment, which is, well, let's say that he won. Well, no, then he should have his electors counted. What? No, because what you talking about? And then Myron jumps in, barely getting much of Myron, and goes, well, the election was stolen. So, okay, well, I guess we could talk about that then, but none of this is something normally they're willing to engage with, which is why I'm happy that finally we got them to. And then to summarize actually, we might talk about it in the second segment, but we also got into the media threats, and there's sort of this attitude of, well, if Trump has the legal power to sue someone or to try to remove someone's license or do this or that, what's wrong with it? And it's like, yeah, well, you can leverage your governmental power for bad outcomes. Just because you have the power doesn't make it acceptable. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. And I think I've told you before, it's a lot of effort. Like this one, you have to drive out, do this whole thing, drive to West Virginia, and kind of takes up a whole day. But I do think, at least even if it's just for y'all, I know his audience is going to go, oh no, Luke sucks. But to see how, when confronted, the MAGA ideology sort of interacts. So share your thoughts in the comments. Support the show. Get the members only bonus show by clicking that join button below.